excited to actually have our next guest right here with me. This is like such just, it makes the summit 10 times better for me to actually be sitting right beside our next guest, my amazing friend, Catherine Wallis, and such an incredible speaker. Catherine is an inspirational certified speaker, a peer mentor to women, a thriver of domestic abuse, and an advocate for suicide prevention and mental health. She's on a new journey of developing her entrepreneurship as a personal development coach. Catherine shares her knowledge and expertise so that others may own their internal flame. So Ronnie's like, let's figure it out, and then Catherine's like, let's own it, just like the rock you part, right? So her
Perfect fit.
right? Such a good like lead in there. Her life's journey thus far has brought her to this place of being a fierce warrior for women, especially the underdogs. So welcome to our stage and to my home. Welcome to the Never Give Up Summit.
Thanks so much, Emmy. And I first need to give a shout out to Emmy for, I was concerned about tech issues and she's like, come on over to my place. So here we are. And it's just been absolutely wonderful. And Ron, thank you as well for all the work that you both have done to just make this a fabulous, fabulous summit. Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad you are here, Catherine, because I know when we talked a couple months ago, I think, right when during Emerging Speakers, and I was like, oh my gosh, people need to hear your story.
Right?
Tell your story right here. Tell us your story.
She's going to, and I just want to give a trigger warning that it does talk about suicide. So if that is a trigger for you, you may want to come back in 5 minutes or at the end of this half hour, because we'll be discussing it. But she does it I'm going to let her share her story because it is beautifully, beautifully told. Over to you, Miss Catherine.
Go ahead now. Mm-hmm. Let me share a story with you about one of my best friends, my brother Steve. Growing up in North Bay, Ontario, my brother and I were adopted when we were babies. We were from 2 separate families and now a family of 4. We went to the same high schools growing up, and once we hit high school, it was comical when I was hanging out in a group with my friends. I could see him looking over on occasion just to make sure the older boys weren't bothering me. He always had my back. Do you remember Bugs Bunny? Saturday afternoon would come, my brother would come in the house, turn on the TV and start laughing like crazy. I think it might have been a little weed thrown in there. But for me, he was entertaining. We skied together as a family, and he was the freestyle king on the slopes. If there was one of the boys to go off the grid, it was Steve, and nothing was going to stop him. After my parents divorced, Steve became a nurse and headed for Texas. He was damn good at what he was doing. Nursing was all that he was about. Caring, thoughtful, and he worked long hours to make sure everyone was taken care of. We would talk on the phone regularly, and he shared that he'd met a beautiful girl. Within a short period of time, he announced that they'd be married, and my mom was to sing at their wedding, and we were on our way to Texas. Arriving at the house, it was our first time meeting his fiancée. She was a beautiful girl, but something was just off. She wasn't the warm and fuzzy type like us, a lukewarm and a forced smile. Sorry, pause for a moment. Forced smile, but she was the one he had chosen, so I accepted her as she was. Steve and I always chatted on the phone, but a few years into his marriage, something changed. He would say, "This marriage thing is getting old, Kath." Suggesting he come for a visit, he always resorted back to work. He needed to be there for the people that he looked after. Working at the laboratory one evening, I just physically wasn't feeling quite right. A sense of mild nausea kept churning in my stomach. Then the call came that would change my life. my husband called to tell me that my brother had taken his life with a gun in front of his wife. My co-workers came to my rescue, lifted me up, and my husband came to pick me up. I couldn't even walk to the door. Someone help me. Just make this pain go away. Heading into the house, I sought refuge on the couch. The tears just didn't come out. I was numb, silent, and in shock. It wasn't long before I was picking up the pillows, throwing them, screaming, crying, shouting, holding my head in my hands, and yelling, "Steve! Why? Why would you leave me like this?" Running to the bathroom, my stomach voided whatever was in it. Continuously. I had to call my sister-in-law and start to get myself together to get a flight to Texas. Of course she was distraught, and I know that her daughter's heart was broken. She idolized Steve. Arriving at the Houston airport, my sister-in-law greeted me with a rather insignificant hug. We got into my brother's beautiful Alfa Romeo and we drove off. Nothing was said. She had the stereo blaring, and she conveyed that she'd be dropping me off at the house, their house, and she picked me up later. Pulling around the corner of their street, the first thing I noticed was the yellow tape. It was a crime scene, and there would be nobody there but me. Paralyzed like a robot, she let me in the house, showed me the security alarm, and left. The house was quiet. I smelled death. Not because of what had happened there, but because my heart was torn apart. And once again, I dropped to the floor. "I'm here, Steve. I know you were hurting. I can feel you." The house was in complete disarray, letters piled up, clothes everywhere, carpet samples of the renovations she was going to have done. That wasn't the way I saw it before. Walking through the house as anyone would, I looked for a note. Anything or anywhere that I could solve this mystery of his broken heart. On my knees, reaching under the bed, my hands touched the steel of several guns. That wasn't really like him, but remember that wild side? Walking into the kitchen, I noticed that the cleanup crew didn't really do the best job in erasing some smears of his blood on the kitchen cabinets. I scoured for gloves, bleach, turned on the stereo as loud it would go, and screamed out his name once again. "Steve!" The urge that came over me was being responsible to take care of him. Was I going crazy? He was gone. What could I do? How could I change this? I had to go outside and check out the pool. It was lime green, and I had to change that, make it better, and clean up this mess. Heading to the garage, I forgot about the security alarm I set off. Now I'm really going crazy. I was on high alert, fight or flight, run or hide. As I reached my hand over the gate to unlatch it, a strong hand pulled the gate open and put a gun to my chest. "Get your hands up!" It was the police. The princess forgot to notify the authorities that I was there. I was in the clear, and heading back into the house, I continued to search for anything that would give me an answer. Having very little involvement in the funeral arrangements, I felt like an outcast until I met his colleagues at the 3 hospitals where he worked. The hugs, tears, and adulation for my brother all made sense now. In a small luncheon, a dear friend of his came to me and silently whispered, "Things aren't always what they seem, Kath. Talk to me if you get a chance." I never pursued that opportunity. Subconsciously, maybe I just didn't want to know. Once I was back home, I had to talk to someone, anyone who could understand my grief. Therapy helped a bit. I hid and became depressed myself. Pardon me for a sec. The best therapy I had were my adorable children who kept me busy, and I poured every ounce of my love into them, now more than ever. This was no longer his pain, but mine. Moving forward, I needed to be able to forgive him for the choice that he made and come to the understanding that it wasn't my decision to make. This may sound confusing for some, but it's the only answer to this kind of grief. What I chose to do with that pain was a catalyst which set my life into motion, and recognizing the beauty in each day and in every person. Each spring, when the blooms come out, I am reminded of my brother and how precious life is. The beauty and gifts that each of us holds is so precious and life-changing. We all have circumstances and devastating life events that literally bring us to our knees as we search for a way out of the mess. It is when we look up, get up, and take that one baby step forward, we realize how resilient and courageous we are. Never give up, because you are love. It is crucial that we continue to reach out and thrive in supporting and loving each other, even when we feel like we're drowning. Shine that glorious heart of yours. Know how unique and incredible you are, and go and set the world on fire. That's all, folks.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I love how you just end it with your humor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. Like I was there. Like your storytelling just brought me like to the house. Like I was like in the house, and then in the emotion. And, how has it been for you since then? So how many years ago was that?
Actually, that was back in 1994.
Wow. So in going through, I mean, it's been 28 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, almost years. Then what have you noticed in terms of that journey in being able to process it, and how do you use that now to help others? Because I know you are a coach as well, or empowerment there. How has it changed you to help others?
Well, I would say, Ronnie, as far as the journey has been since 1994, when I'm remembering back to actually how I was still, I would say, mentally, emotionally, and physically numb. Obviously looking after my children and able to get up and do what I needed to do. But it takes a while for that to actually resonate in a person that's happened. Going about daily activities. And yet there seemed to be always this sort of dark cloud hanging over of the realization, did that actually happen? And then over the years, as each spring has unfolded, it seems like I'm seeing through rose-colored glasses, if you will. Before there was a lot of fog. Yeah. And there are people that I run into personally, whether it's on the street or otherwise, that I seem to have been given an intuitive sense that something is just not right.
Oh, really? So that because I know when you talk about getting to the heart of the matter, right? What really, what I guess what are a few points to help others to kind of get to the heart of the matter too? You know what I mean? For them, what would you suggest?
I mean, the first and foremost thing that I think is through that experience for me, and then afterwards, was when we go through trauma like that, we tend to pull back and we tend to isolate because we don't feel that anybody's going to understand us. Also, finding people who can be relational to that particular event or other events that we're going through. And continuously, I mean, now we have technology. Within a click of a button, we can be connected with someone. That, I think, as far as mental health, depression, all of those different types of situations is what keeps us in bondage, keeps us hidden, keeps us in shame. We have to reach out, however that looks.
Yeah.
Because I know that, for instance, in my brother's case, I was told after the fact, there was a mental health nurse. He went to a dinner and there was a mental health nurse who sat across from my brother and told my sister-in-law privately, pulled her aside and said, Steve just doesn't seem right. And did nothing. A mental health nurse, right? There are signs, people, somebody's not eating right, somebody's not showing up at work. There are signs that people need to act on, and it fuels me and it frustrates me that we will see those signs and we don't want to get involved, and that usually is the time when we need to get involved.
Yeah.
Right?
I last year when we were doing our Amplifying Voices mental wealth event, we talked about with the distress centers of the Greater Toronto area, and they were talking about how suicide affects 10 lives, not just the person who died. And how then, I forget what the stat is, but the family or close friends are much more likely as well to then commit suicide. So in your speech, when you said that you came to the understanding that it was his decision, I think that that's something a lot of people grapple with, how could he, and they can't get that it was his decision, not your decision. So what were the steps or the journey to you having that understanding? I think that'll really help people too.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Emmy. And I would say that that only came within the past 2 years. I went to see an NLP who was absolutely fabulous. And I'll just share this regardless of what people think. Her credentials are amazing. And she actually picked up on the fact that he was there in the room. She said, he's here and he's not quite sure what you're doing here. And just the fact that he was okay, but also encouraged me, and she shared at that time that, as we want to prevent this, yes, we want to prevent this, but when that finality has come, the one way to get through that grieving process is the acceptance that it's happened. There's nothing I can do to change it anymore. And it was that person's choice. And I know that I don't know if that sounds heartless to some people, because obviously would I have wanted that to change and not happen? Of course. But in order for to go along in the healing process, which has been a long time, I had to accept the fact that it was his choice. Mm-hmm. And, as we see even with Naomi Judd recently, I mean, suicide is an epidemic that even since the pandemic has heightened. And we just need to keep being alert and vigilant of people who are in a dark place. And I mean, as I've done this, I know, I just want to say too that I know this, maybe some people are feeling a little bit heavy right now, but I want to flip that. And I want to flip that and say that it brought me to a place of once again making me realize how precious my life was and how not to worry about the not good enough and all of this crap that we deal with all the time.
Such a beautiful lesson from, and we've been talking about how the lessons come out of the dark gifts.
That's
the dark
right.
gifts, the gifts in dark packages. So amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Catherine, based on those experiences, and I know you've had more experiences, obviously, through the years, and I like that discussion about connection, right? Knowing to connect in different ways to connect. In addition to that connection piece, or maybe some ways to connect, do you have any suggestions for specific ways to connect up, to get support, to get that help, even when, and here's the trick, right? When you don't feel like, or someone doesn't want to connect, how do you convince them to connect when they're in that moment? Because I've been there when I had people die, and it's, you do have that, don't talk to me, life's, horrible, and you blame God and everybody else. And it's, and at the times you're like, I want to join that person, right? Like it shouldn't have happened. So it's hard to hear and connect with others when you're in that state of mind, so whether it's yourself or someone, how do you help them connect?
Very difficult, isn't it? Because, we can persevere, we can, pick up the phone, we can type them a message, and all of a sudden they're not responding. You just have to keep persevering. If you know something's off, you just have to keep persevering. And if you think, well, I'm not going to bother them maybe because they told me, I'm having a rough day, or I need to be isolated, or I need to be alone, do it again and do it again. Because I guarantee you, if they're in a dark place of depression or they have a plan, they're not going to be upset with you down the road because you intervened. So I think as humans, we're so worried about, what that person's going to think. And I would just say, just keep persevering. And then obviously, if they're able to connect on the computer or getting someone, taking them out, getting them in touch with community, there are many resources out there that they can, get involved in. So it's all about involvement and human connection.
Get involved.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
So what does never give up mean to you, Catherine?
Well, I could say a few things, I guess. I could say never give up is knowing how unique and special and individual each one of us are, and to, no matter what you're going through, to keep taking a step each and every day. There's some people that may be watching right now, might be laying in bed. You opened your eyes. That's a step. Because yesterday you didn't open your eyes. Even if it only feels extremely tiny, know that you can make it and never give up and reach out and reach out.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Catherine, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I guess right now it would be my email, which is catherinewallis62@gmail.com.
I'm sorry, Emmy, can you type that in?
I'm going to do that, yep. You are on, continue.
I am on Instagram and Facebook as well, and LinkedIn.
I love it. Everybody on LinkedIn, on all the things. Gmail, you said, right? Is it? Thank you.
Yeah.
And Catherine, I'm curious, what's your plan for the next year? Because as we talked and you were getting, things together, and I was just like, oh my gosh, your stories are amazing. And you've got not just one, you've got multiple stories, right, of never giving up, right? So, and, that's obviously the focus of this summit in sharing those same type of stories. How do you plan to share it more?
Well, we were talking about that imposter syndrome. Well, that's going now. It's almost gone. It's almost gone. It's time. It's time. It's time. It's time to get out there. It's time to get connected. It's time to keep sharing from my heart. And at this point, I mean, it's never, it's so not about me. It's about knowing that I have a responsibility to help people. And I think I'm pretty much in alignment now. But as you can appreciate, sometimes when these stories are all over the place, it's like, okay, what do I do next? But potentially reaching out to you, Ronnie, in the near future.
Well, emerging speakers, everything. I mean, that's how we met, right? Through emerging speakers, and the growth in the program, right, where you can build confidence when you have a community of people that support you. And you can see this, right, when you're even in the chat, people, right, when you're talking, you see other people. It's amazing what connection, right, does for you, and how it can create a whole nother level of not just energy, but synergy. Because when two people together, there's other opportunities and more possibilities that come out of that, above and beyond, what you're doing now and what someone else is doing. That's the beauty of it. And you've just made some huge strides, even from the last time we talked, which was really a couple months ago. Your focus and your storytelling is just you okay? I mean,
yeah. Drop the Kleenex. It's important. The Kleenex.
I just keep doing it, and you just got to get out there and share more. But you really have a genuine, sincere, and powerful. You have a natural, like, I'm not imagining. Put it in the chat if you agree, because I'm like, there's like a natural energy of like just, you pull me in. I was just like, all right, I'm ready for the next story.
A presence indeed.
Right?
Yeah.
That's storytelling at its best. That's thank you, Rena. Thank you, Dan. We know that's part of emerging speakers.
Absolutely. And I want to just thank, sorry if I mispronounce your name, I think it's Maduri, saying that, you reached out and you saved a life that way. It's so important, and thank you for sharing that. It can absolutely, well, it did make a difference in someone's life, and that's what reaching out can do, just like Catherine recommended. So let's do it.
Thank you so much, and I hope that sharing this hasn't put a damper. People listening, I hope that my purpose today with this particular speech is to touch people. You may be going through something, or you may know someone who's going through something.
Yep.
And I can't implore you enough to reach out and tell them it's going to be okay. You got this. So thank you so much. It's just been such a privilege, a blessing, and an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
It's our
Thank you, Catherine.
blessing and honor. We love it.